Hi, my name is Jessica Chaska, and I am a physical therapist at Ladybird Physical Therapy. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to do internal vaginal trigger point release with a pelvic wand. Okay, so why would we want you to do this? Well, for whatever reason, you have increased pelvic floor tension. Okay, so releasing that tension at home is something that will further your progress, right? Like if we're working on this in the session, it's probably going to help you to maintain that progress by also working on it at home or even improve further. Now, why, like what does pelvic floor tension cause? Like what are the symptoms that you're addressing? That would be, usually that's either pain with sex or after sex or with orgasm. That could be urinary urgency or frequency. That could be difficulty emptying your bladder. That could be constipation or just pelvic pain in general. Okay, so that's what we're trying to address by like releasing the internal pelvic floor muscles. Okay. Things to remember would be like you are in control. So if you're not ready to use a pelvic wand or a dilator, that's okay. Talk to your therapist about that. Remember that this isn't going to be painful. So this is not a no pain, no gain situation. Yes, there could be some discomfort, but I always tell my patients, I want you to be able to breathe through it. I want you to be able to talk through it. And you shouldn't feel other muscles like your glutes or your abdomen or your legs tensing in response to this pain. That means it's too much, even if you mentally feel like you can tolerate it. So on like my handouts, I always put no more than 3 out of 10. And I know that seems a little bit arbitrary, but to me, that's what I think we can all like easily tolerate. So this should not be a painful experience, okay? And one reason for that too is that if we release the muscles, that's great. But what we do, if we put too much pressure and it's a painful experience, the muscle just like rebounds, okay? So then the muscles release, but then they just come back to being tense. And so in theory, like what was really the point of doing that? So we want this to be an easy, painless experience, as less discomfort as possible, okay? Other things to remember is that this video doesn't necessarily it does not supersede what your therapist has told you. So I'm going to tell you in general how to release the pelvic floor muscles, but definitely ask questions like to your PT if you have any questions about the technique or how often you should be doing it. Make sure to talk to your physical therapist, okay? This is just kind of supposed to be a little tool or a little bit of help to get you through it, okay? All right, so before we start using a pelvic wand, what position do we want to be in? Like, how are you going to reach? So you want to be semi-reclined, okay? So like if you're in bed, you'd be like laying against the headboard, pillows supporting you so that you can reach that area, because you can't be sitting up because then you can't insert anything. You can't be laying flat because then you can't really reach, okay? Your legs are going to be butterflied. Some people like pillows underneath their knees just to provide some support. Some people don't. It just depends. You want to make sure you're using lubrication. So this is like a hard plastic device that's covered in silicone. So this is from Intimate Rose. I will link where you can get these in like the handout or the like notes underneath this video. But it's covered in silicone, so you don't want to use silicone lubrication. So I usually recommend to people using a water-based lubrication that doesn't have glycerin or parabens or like additives or anything. But if you want to go really, really natural, coconut oil or olive oil are appropriate too. Okay, so you want to make sure it's lubricated. Depending on how far you're going, I wouldn't just put lubrication here. I would put it kind of along like how far you think you're going to insert the wand, okay? And we'll go over that piece. Now for this specifically, this end is for, from the notes, like the manufacturer's notes, this is like the vaginal end. You can use this end rectally, but if you're really nervous about this size, you can start here. This is a little bit thinner. So that's kind of up to your comfort level too. But okay, so we talked about position. You're gonna put lubrication on it. You are going to separate the labia and then slowly insert the wand, okay? You have to have a little bit of a downward angle so you don't hit the urethra, okay? So if this is the vagina, you're gonna insert it, you're probably gonna be holding it more like this, at a little bit of a downwards angle. Now, I want you to think of the vaginal canal depth-wise as being 3 layers deep, okay? Each layer being 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep. So for example, my wand, if I insert it 1 inch, I'm on that first layer. Okay, if I insert another inch, I'm on that second layer depth-wise. Another inch, I'm on the third layer. Okay, so that's what I mean by depth. We're going this way, not necessarily like how much pressure you're putting. Okay, now on each layer, I now want you to think of the vaginal opening like a clock. Okay, so if someone's laying down and like this is like the bed or the mat or whatever, this would be 6, this would be 12, and then we have like 3 and 9. So you've inserted the dilator or the wand 1 inch, right? Then you're going to turn it to the side, okay, and hold pressure on a spot that feels tense or painful for about a minute, okay? You can do this all along that first layer. Between 2 and 10 is usually what I tell people. So it's like if you turn it and you're like, oh, that kind of feels tender, you're gonna hold pressure. Okay, I want you to take deep breaths. I want you to focus on relaxing your legs and abdomen. If you're like, I can't relax my legs and abdomen, less pressure, maybe less depth, okay? You wanna go, this is where you go at your pace, all right, and what feels like better for you. So I usually tell people in general, like, let's do like 2 spots per side, like left and right, per layer. So let's say 4. So let's say we did like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock. You did on the first layer. Now you go 2 layers, right? So now you're 2 inches in, you do that same thing. You can go hold pressure at 3, hold pressure at 4, pressure at 7, hold pressure at 9 for a minute at each one. Okay, and then you can do that on the third layer. Now, if you know you have more intention deep versus superficial, then of course, like focus your time, your energy on where you know you have more pain or where you know you have more tension. But that's where talking to a physical therapist about like, where is your tension? How do you work on that at home is going to benefit you more than like this general video. This is more just like the technique, okay? I think what surprises people is how much they have to turn the dilator. So for example, for me to really turn and get to that side, like look how much I have to turn the dilator. It's usually like hitting people's, like your leg almost. And this is something I always recommend, that if my patients, like they get the wand, they use it at home and they have questions, they then can bring it in and then I can use it on them so that they know how it's supposed to feel. Because it is always going to feel different than when your therapist is doing internal work, okay? For a lot of different reasons. I joke that I'm gonna do this for a living, so I'm very good at it, versus like this is your first time. But also you're in a slightly different position. Like when we're doing internal work, you're laying down flat on the table. So that little tilt of your pelvis is gonna change like the way the muscles lay. You are, you're having to use your arms, like the muscles are going to be a little bit more engaged. So it's going to feel different for that reason. For some people, it's actually less painful and it's because they're in control of it, right? And so sometimes they'll find that it's not as painful when they're using it at home and then they feel like they're not doing something right. And I would say, as long as you are staying between that 2 and 10, right? Okay, so you're really working the sides and the bottom. As long as you're doing that, not working too much towards the top, and you're able to tolerate that pressure and it's not, too painful, then you're doing something therapeutic. And I think that is where a lot of people feel frustrated. Now, if you're wondering like, why only between 2 and 10? The reason is because this top part, right? So like more like 10 to 2, you have your pubic bone, you have your urethra, and really thin layers of tissue and muscle. It's just hard to release that area on your own. You want to be good at internal release before you go there. So I'd really only work on that area if you've talked about that with your physical therapist. You're just more likely to make yourself sore, and it's not necessarily like a dangerous thing. It's just, you don't need to do that. And it's something that like you also just like don't need to release your urethra, right? Like we're just working on releasing the tissue around it, okay? Because that's what's giving you like pain with urination or your urgency frequency. It's not like the urethra itself, it's what surrounds it. Okay, so the big key points again with like using a wand would be, remember that there's 3 layers of depth. Okay, you want to go between 2 and 10, so sides and the bottom, no more than 3 out of 10 pain, holding pressure on spots that feel tense or painful for about a minute. Okay, those are the big points. Now, feel free to email us if you have any questions on how to use your wand or dilator at home, okay? My email is jessica@ladybirdpt.com. We'll post like the link to where you can get this. This is an Intimate Rose pelvic wand. We think they're great, and I really like the curve that they have so that you can reach different spots as opposed to like a straight dilator where you have to like really turn it. But yeah, otherwise, if you have any questions, please let us know. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks.